Hi, it's Jeffrey and welcome to a new Boy Reads World video. Today I'm doing my June wrap-up for you, which you've already should have seen yesterday, but halfway through filming my phone decided that it didn't have enough storage, so I just spent 10 minutes talking to myself, which is an experience. No. So I managed to read 7 books in June, which isn't all that bad, seeing I spent most of my time at festivals and going to Adele concerts. Amazing. But before I get started, I would like to welcome all my new subscribers, who undoubtedly all found me thanks to a shout out by Simon over at Savage Reads, so thanks Simon for that. I hope you enjoy all my content and my future videos, so yeah, welcome. I'll just go through these books as I read them, and the first book that I started with in June was My Name is Lucy Barton by Elizabeth Strout. This is about a girl named Lucy Barton who ends up in hospital after an appendicitis has gone wrong, and one morning she finds her mother sitting at her bedside, which is quite unusual seeing she hasn't talked to her mother in forever, or any of her family for that matter, and they start talking and a lot of unresolved family issues are being talked about. A lot of things in their past are being confronted because Lucy Barton grew up in quite an impoverished situation and she didn't get along with her family, hence not talking to them for quite a while. And while this is happening, Lucy gradually comes to realize that her life in New York with her husband isn't all that what she has expected from it. So yeah, I picked this book up because some people were saying that it's gonna be on the long list for the Man Booker Prize. And yeah, I see this. I gave this 4 stars, so yeah, it would definitely deserve a place on that, I think. Then the second book that I read was a lot more light-hearted, and that is I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson, which is a YA novel. And although I'm not a big fan of YA, this is definitely better than some other things that I've read in the genre. This is about a twin that is very artistic, but they're also very different. There's a boy and a girl, and the boy is very introverted, while the girl is very popular among her friends and in school. But despite their differences, they're very close to each other. But then early on in the book, their mother dies, and the book jumps forward 2 years and alternates between the time before their mother dies and 2 years after, and you see how their lives have vastly changed and how their close relationship has just dissolved into like a state of they talk to each other but they don't really like each other anymore, and gradually you find out the reason for that. And this also would have been a great addition to my previous video, the LGBT books that I recommended, because this also deals with a gay character that is coming out and coming to terms with his sexuality. Definitely one that I recommend if you're a fan of the YA genre. Then the third book that I read in June was a non-fiction one, and that is The World Without Us by Weisman. It's exactly what the title says. What would the world be if we just stopped existing from one day to another? And I found this a very fascinating read. We always have an idea about what our influence on the world has been, but this really goes into detail and describes how nature would reclaim cities like New York in just like 30 years. So that's, that puts it really into perspective. A book that I started in February and finally finished in June, and that's The People in the Trees by Hanya Yanagihara. Of course I picked this book up because I read and thoroughly enjoyed A Little Life last summer. The reason that this took me a couple of months is because I was expecting another A Little Life, but that was very presumptuous of me because this is a great book, but it's not A Little Life. This is about a scientist that goes to Micronesia and discovers a whole new tribe of people who apparently have the ability to live forever by eating a turtle, as is pictured on the cover. And yeah, if you go into this book expecting a new Little Life, don't bother, but this is still a very interesting book. It's written down as a sort of memoir by the scientist, and a friend of him annotates it, so it takes a while to get into it, but once you're into it, it's, I maybe read 100 pages in the first 3 months and then just read the other 300 pages in June, so yeah, A very good book, a very strong debut by Hanya Yanagihara, so I'm expecting another very good third book, so I'm hoping she writes a third book. I don't know if there's anything in the pipelines for her, but I'm going to see her in October, so I'm definitely going to ask for a third book. The fifth book was one that I was thoroughly disappointed by, and that's The Department of Speculation by Jenny Offill. This is a Dutch copy, so don't mind that. This is about a woman who starts describing her entire life, but it mostly centers on her being a mother and a wife, and I don't know, I think I just wasn't the right audience for this, because it really delves into being a mother and not always loving your child 100% and not always being there for your husband. And maybe I'm not in that part of my life yet that this would resonate with me, so I'm going to keep it and maybe pick it up in another 20, 30 years, I don't know. It's like I said, I just wasn't the right audience for this. I gave it 2 stars, but I can see that this would be a good book for somebody who has more feeling with it, who has been in that situation. Yeah, it's not my kind of book. And the 6th book is one that I wasn't sure I was going to include it in this wrap-up, but I found it very fascinating, so I'm going to talk about it, and that is Zinc by David van Reybrouck, who is famous here for a very good history on Congo, which was our only colony in the 19th and 20th century, and which is a very awful blemish on the Belgian history. But this is about Neutraal Moresnet, which was a very small area of land between Belgium and then Prussia, now Germany, and which existed from like 1816 to 1919, and which was created by the Congress of Versailles, and which has had such a tumultuous history but isn't really that well known, because this was the first time that I heard about it. And it takes the history of Neutraal Moresnet by looking at one person who has lived there from the end of the 19th century to halfway the 20th century. And the most fascinating thing about this was that person who has never moved in his entire life for the 70 years that he lived there changed nationalities 5 times. So he never moved, but the borders just crossed him. One time he was a part of Neutraal Moresnet, which was an independent state with its own government and its own currency. Then Belgium took over, then Prussia invaded, then Germany invaded in the First World War, and it completely changed. Then he had to fight for Belgium, then he had to fight for Germany, and it's such a fascinating read about how such a small piece of land, which was nothing more than a zinc mine, hence the title, had such a chaotic history for over 100 years and then just stopped existing and became part of Belgium after the First World War. I doubt this will ever get translated into English, but I just had to talk about it because it's, yeah, like I said, very fascinating. And then finally, my 7th book was one that I had to read for my book club, which is not this Sunday, and that is Special Topics in Calamity Physics by Marisha Pessl. This is quite a big book, and the reason that I was excited for this was because it is compared to The Secret History by Donna Tartt, which is setting you up for failure, I guess, because, you know, who can compare to The Secret History by Donna Tartt, because, yeah, that's just a classic in its own right. This is also about a girl who goes to a new college and gets embroiled with a group of friends who have this enigmatic teacher that they all flock to and have Sunday dinners with. But I guess, yeah, the comparison with the Secret History just end there, because for half the book there's this build-up that something is going to happen, and then that thing happens, and then the book completely fell apart for me. It took one crazy turn after another, and I'm a kind of guy who likes a twist, but not in this way. It was this had more turns and twists than the Amazon River, and not in a good way, because it just became crazier and crazier, and I just couldn't believe it anymore in the setting of the story. And then, I don't know, like 20 pages before the book ends, something even more absurd happens, and I really had the urge to just throw this book across the room. But you know, we don't do this because we love books. So yeah, I saw that a lot of members of my book club gave this 4 or 5 stars. So yeah, there will be some hefty discussions this Sunday. Those were the books that I read in June, which was quite a mixed bag, but some 4-star books among them, so quite pleased with that. If you have any comments on the books that I read, or any recommendations pertaining to those books, or just books that you read in June that you want me to read, please leave a comment down below and we'll have a discussion. And yeah, I'll see you in my next video. Bye!